Welcome to iBest English Centre, free online IELTS lessons. Today we're going to look at useful vocabulary for maps in IELTS Writing Task 1. This lesson is for students aiming for a band score 6 and above. In Task 1 for maps, it's possible to get different types of maps. There are maps showing a city, a town, a village, an area of development, or even a building plan. Today we're going to look at maps of towns. Knowing the points of the compass is essential for IELTS maps. Let's have a look at some of the words you're going to need. North, south, east, west, northeast, southwest, southeast, northwest. You will need to use these words to describe the location of things on the map. Let's have a look at some examples of how this vocabulary is used in sentences. The hospital is located in the northeast corner of the map. The factory is situated in the south of the town. In the northwest, there is a small residential area. You can see that a similar sentence structure is used for the first two examples. But in the third example, we start with the compass point. You can also see that is located and is situated is the passive voice. It's essential that you give the examiner a range of tenses in your writing. So let's have a look at some more useful language. Is located, can be seen, is situated, lies. We do need to offer the examiner a range of vocabulary. Let's have a look at more useful language. In the centre of the town, there are two bridges crossing the river. You can see that the verb we need to use is the verb to cross. Two bridges crossing the river. You need to show the examiner good collocations so that you understand that bridges cross rivers. Another example. On the bank of the river. This means on the edge of the river. On the coast. This is not the same as a beach. A beach normally has sand. This only indicates the edge of the sea. On the coast. And the last example. The railway line runs along the coast. Here we have the verb run. This is the same verb that we use for roads, and runs along because it goes along the length of the coast. So the railway line runs along the coast. Or we can change the structure of this sentence and say, running along the coast is the railway line. This is a higher band score sentence because it begins with a gerund. So remember to offer the examiner good vocabulary, good collocations, and a range of sentence structures. Now let's look at points of reference. We have already learnt how to talk about the location of a place. But now let's look at talking about the location of a place in relation to another place. The hospital is located north of the parking area. North of the residential blocks is a supermarket. You can see that we're using the location of the parking area to describe the location of the hospital. The hospital is located north of the parking area. When you're using these grammatical structures, don't forget to use the preposition of, north of the parking area. You can also see that the two sentences on this page have a different structure. Don't forget to vary your structure so that the examiner has a good range. Maps often have extra information that you will need to write about, so you need to take a good look at your map before you start writing to make sure that you are going to describe everything. Let's have a look at this map. On the right-hand side, you can see there is a key. And on the key for this map, there are 5 things listed: residential, industrial, motorway, railway, and countryside. You will need to locate each of these on the map and include them in your report. However, the most important thing to remember is that these headings need to be altered and adapted to become grammatically correct in your sentence. So, for example, the word residential in the key is spelt with a capital R. However, when we use it, we need to use a small r, unless it's the first word of a sentence. You will also see that the word residential is actually an adjective. So therefore, we really need to think what noun should go with this adjective. And the answer is residential area. This is exactly the same with the next one, which is industrial. We need to adapt this and find a noun. This should be industrial zone. And of course, the last one, countryside, you will need to think of a preposition as well, and that is in the countryside. If the map gives information about the population of a town, don't forget to include this in your report. Here is a typical sentence structure for this type of information. Pellington has a population of 120,000. You will also need to see whether there is any reference to towns located further away from the actual town in your map. So, for example, in this map, you can see there's a reference to a town called Hamford. The information about Hamford includes the population and the distance from Pellington. So you will need to include both pieces of information in your report. Here is a sentence. Hamford, which has a population of 30,000, is located 15 kilometres from Pellington. You can see that I've included the population and the distance in one sentence. I've done this by using a clause, which has a population of 30,000. This creates a complex structure, and for students who are aiming for a band score 6 and above, it's essential that you actually do use some clauses in your report. However, if you're going to use a clause, please don't forget to have the correct punctuation. Hamford, comma, which has a population of 30,000, comma, is located 15 kilometres from Pellington. Some maps include information about a traffic-free zone. You will have to include this information in your report, but so many students don't really understand what it means, so let me explain. A traffic-free zone is an area in a town or city where transport is not permitted to enter. This means that cars, buses, motorbikes are not able to go into that area. It is a pedestrian area. Pedestrian means people walking. So it's an area for people to walk around, not for traffic. Some maps also include information about roads and motorways, and you will have to refer to this information in your report. So let's have a look at this map. You can see that there is a railway, which is a dotted line, running from the southeast to the northwest of the town. You can also see that there are 3 main roads running from the town centre. So let's have a look at the first example. The main road connects Hindon to Galston. Here we're using the verb connect. The road connects towns together. In the next example, we'll look at Cranston. Cranston is connected to Galston by both the main road and the railway. Here we're going to include both the road and the railway, and we're using the verb linked to. Don't forget, this uses a preposition. It's a phrasal verb, linked to. And the last example, let's have a look at S1. S1 is located between the main road and the railway to Hindon. Here we're using the railway and the road to describe the location of S1. It is possible that you'll be given 2 maps of the same area, but in different time periods. In this case, you'll have to talk about the changes that have occurred between one period of time and the next. Let's take a look at the example. The housing area in the south of the town, on the coast, was replaced by residential blocks and a supermarket. Here you can see I've given the location of the housing in the first map, Then I've said was replaced by, this is the past passive, and then I've given what replaced it, which was the residential blocks in the supermarket. So in this sentence, I've given the examiner the change that has occurred in that part of the map. Let's have a look at some more useful verbs that you will need if you're going to talk about changes in time periods. Was established, was built, was constructed, was made, was replaced by, was knocked down, was extended. You will need to use a variety of language and a lot of the past passive in this type of report. So before we conclude the lesson, let's have a look at some of the common errors that people make when they use vocabulary for maps. One of the most common errors is actually articles. Many students really struggle with whether they should use a, an, the, or nothing at all. I highly recommend that you do a lot of practice with this. The more errors you make, the lower your band score will be. Another example of a common error are capital letters. Again, as I explained earlier on in this lesson, your headings will need to be adapted. So make sure you're using capital letters correctly. And of course, the last common error really is many students forget to use a good range of vocabulary. Try not to repeat the same words all the time. If you're aiming for a band score 7 or above, you will need to show quite a flexible range of vocabulary in your report. We hope you enjoyed this short lesson on useful vocabulary for maps in writing task 1. For more information about IELTS, please call us. This was brought to you by iBest English Centre, a training centre that focuses on IELTS, English and TOEIC.